Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. So we have a big article from J.J. Schreier that went into the development of Halo Infinite. So let's get into it. First off, the senior creative director for Microsoft, Joe Staten, where he worked on other big games including State of Decay and Crackdown. A month after the infamous 2020 demo, State rejoined 343 as its creative director. One of the first things he did was to remind the studio's demoralized staff that the franchise's long-running success had actually been marked by several bumpy introductions, including a disastrous demo of the first game in 2001. That almost doomed the series before it even started. Which is true. The risky decision to slow him down seems to have transformed a potential disaster into a real success. In November, 343 surprised fans by releasing the free multiplayer mode on the 20th anniversary. By the next day, the game had set an Xbox record for most concurrent players on the online gaming platform Steam. The full version went on sale December 8th to positive initial reviews. Halo Infinite can't just be another game. It needs to be the Halo that exists in your imagination, wrote CNET reviewer Mark says. And incredibly against all odds, it pretty much is. Ever since inception 2007, 343 took over production of Halo from Bungie. The studio that made the earlier versions, the Microsoft-owned studio, has been characterized by flawed internal tech tools, infighting, and high turnover. According to interviews with more than 20 current and former employees who requested nominee because they weren't authorized to speak publicly. Next up, all those factors played a role in the difficulties of Halo Infinite, which the studio started in 2015 after Halo 5. After kicking around various formulas, the developers landed on an idea that stuck. Halo is an open world game. Rather than progress through a series of levels, players will explore a giant landmass, complete a mission in the order, as they did in Nintendo Co.'s 2017 Breath of the Wild, which is considered one of the greatest video games of all time. I agree with that statement. If you somehow have a Switch, go play that game. Absolutely phenomenal. I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm intrigued by the sequel. So we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, moving on. Video games are built using software tools called gaming engines. The engine used to build Halo was one that they largely used old code from Bungie. Part of the engine, a set of tools called Faber, became infamous in the studio for being buggy and hard to use. Within engineering, there's a concept known as technical debt, which refers to problems one puts up with because the previous programmers of the system chose quick, easy solutions over more sustainable ones. Faber's code, some of which dated back to 2000, had so much debt that 343 engineers mockingly referred to it as technical bankruptcy. Halo Infinite's creative direction was also in flux until unusually late in its development. Several developers described 343 as a company split into fiefdoms, with every team jockeying for resources and making conflicting decisions. One developer describes the process of 4 to 5 games being developed simultaneously. Yikes. Anyway, by the summer of 2019, Halo Infinite was in crisis mode. The studio decided to cut almost 2/3 of the entire planned game, leaving the managers to instruct some designers to come to the office and do nothing while the studio figured out the next move. What? Eventually, the game's open world was cut back from a vast Zelda-like experience to something far smaller. It soon became clear that some on the team that even with the compromises, getting Halo into decent shape by the following fall would be impossible. Still, at the time of the release didn't seem up for discussion. Microsoft told them that it had to be a launch game for the next Xbox, which meant releasing it in November 2020. Luckily, it did not. And now, finally, the demo that changed all that. Microsoft said on August 11th that it would delay the game, though it left the exact timing vague. When Staten arrived, he pushed his bosses to let 343 take its time, presenting them with a list of features that would make Halo Infinite a success if time weren't the only factor. Here's a list of all things we could do to make the game excellent. He recalls telling them, here's what more time buys us. As a player, Staten liked how computer-controlled Marines in earlier versions would join up with him on his battles. At the time he took over, he says, Marines in Halo Infinite were programmed to stay frustratingly close to spots where the players first encountered them. Every once in a while, I ran into a couple of them, but they kind of stay where they are. They don't show up on adventure, and they're not part of that heroic feel that you get from classic Halo games. I'm not gonna read the full thing because I think this video would be pretty ridiculous, long, at least in my opinion. So to sum it up, Microsoft had to essentially, they fortunately gave 343 more time so that they can actually make a game that is actually pretty good. And now, reading all this, I get it now. I totally get it why the game is lacking in content now for its, in terms of features. Like co-op and Forge, it makes sense now. Makes complete sense. So it's honestly a miracle that, you know, based on the 3 shooters, this one seems to be the least buggy. So kudos to the team at 3 for 3, and thank God Joe Stain showed up. He seemed to be like the savior of this game. Like, thank goodness. Like, we dodged a bullet. We definitely dodged a bullet there. Thank God, man. Because it could have been, man, it could have been on MCC levels of disaster. Well, today's the day, so and I'm very excited. So I'm like all of you. To end this video up. Today, let's celebrate the fact that, you know, for the first time in 6 years, we'll be joining Master Chief on his latest adventure on Zeta Halo. So until then, this is Halo Gaming signing out. Have a great one.